Hello, welcome to The Profile. My name is Gary Dunn, and tonight in the chair we have a wonderful person, Mr. Paul Reynolds. Paul, how are you tonight?
Great, thanks Gary, and you?
Yeah, fantastic, and really nice to have you in here, Paul.
Excellent, good to be here.
First question, where were you born?
I was born in Canberra, which I was, at the time, talking about 1951, population of the city at that time was about 140,000 people, and almost all of them were low-ends because it was just a new city.
Yeah.
It was like 60% of the workforce was in the public service, and the rest were all tradesmen. So we were, you know, among the first generation to really sort of be born in Canberra as a city.
And some of our viewers wouldn't know how many instruments you play, but how many instruments do you play, Paul?
Essentially, I'm a bass player and a guitarist. You know, over the years, I used to play double bass a long time ago, but I had to leave it behind when I came to Perth, so it wouldn't fit in the car. So I haven't really played ever since then. And I can sort of dabble a bit on the keyboards and the flute and so on, but I'm a bass player and a guitarist. And
so, if you look at your back, I know the moment in my life when I decided I'm going to be a musician. When was that moment for you? How did that come about?
Well, it wasn't really a defining moment as such. My mother was a singer, never an actual professional performer, but she was a very good singer, and she always used to boast that when she was a young girl, she went in a talent quest in England, and she actually beat Gracie Fields, who was one of the great singers of the time in England. She actually came in ahead of Gracie Fields. So, and Dad wasn't a musician, but he sort of had a banjo that he used to plunk. So there was always music in the house, you know. And I just absorbed it. And then my big brother got into playing the drums, and of course that was sort of it.
Yeah.
Really, you know, suddenly there was all this other music happening. It wasn't the light classical and the pop music that Mum and Dad were listening to. There was this rock and roll. There was Fats Domino and Elvis and all the rest of it. And it was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
So what would be the biggest influence, you know, on your life as far as music goes? Those early days, or?
Pretty much. I worked at one stage in Canberra in a band that was managed by a guy called Forbes Cameron. Right? Now, Forbes was a very high official in the Treasury Department, but he was also a piano player, and he owned a record shop, which was like an import record shop. And so I was working in a band that he was managing, and we used to gather at Forbes' shop after hours. Once he left Treasury and we were all finished work, we'll go and sit in there and drink scotch and listen to music. And you know, Forbes just sort of said, "Have you heard this? Do you like this? What about this?" And just, you know, opened my head completely.
It's amazing when someone comes up to you and says, "Listen to that."
Yeah, and that's exactly what he did. He really sort of guided us into all kinds of things that we never would have got into without him. Yes.
So Canberra, jump in a car, couldn't fit the double bass in.
No, that's it.
Why did you decide to come to Perth? What was the reason?
I had been working in Canberra, doing a bit of writing and so on with a guy called Peter Wynn. Now, Pete was working at Channel 7 in Canberra, and he got a job over here at SCW9 as a cameraman. And he came over here and started working. He was looking around, and he got on the phone. He said, "Paul, you won't believe what it's like in Perth. There is so much work for musicians, you know, because there was no professional musicians in Canberra. They were all part-time." And he said, "Mate, you should get over here." And I managed to wangle a transfer, because I was working in the public service at immigration. I managed to wangle a transfer to get over here. And I spent a couple of months sort of getting settled and looking around. And then I just left the public service and never looked back. Yeah. You know, so.
And that was 1974?
74, yeah.
And I think El Sombrero, was it?
Oh, yes, that was my first sort of full-time gig here. It was pretty cabaret sort of thing, the resident band in the El Sombrero restaurant, which was down by the river next door to the Royal Perth Yacht Club.
Yeah, that's right.
But I met a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, the guys that were working there were Wally Sinton from the Piano Warehouse, and Barry Cox was music equipment importer, and so on. And we met a lot of important people around the town, you know, great musicians, and it sort of launched me into the business, really.
Wow, yeah. So, bass guitar, what's your favourite bass guitar? Do you have one?
Yeah, well, I've become a jazz bass player. You know, I had a Rickenbacker, which unfortunately I sold, which was, you know, probably a bit of a mistake, and I sold it to buy a Yamaha, and it was the first Yamaha that was a real professional instrument.
Yep.
You know, handmade, hand-finished, adjustable tension machine heads. Beautiful, beautiful bass.
Those early Japanese guitars, and bass guitars and guitars were just fantastic.
Yeah, well, so this was the point when they really got serious.
Yeah.
And I was out at Cosmic one day, and Kevin Price, who was working there at the time, sort of put this in my hands. He said, "I think this is going to belong to you." He said, "Take it to the gig tonight," knowing full well that I would never ever bring it back.
Kevin was always a good salesman.
He was right. Well, he was a great salesman, but he knew exactly what was right.
Yeah.
You know, he knew that I would pick it up and I would never put it down.
Yeah.
And I still have it, which is, you know, like nearly close to 40 years later.
That's your favourite?
Well, it is, but I can't play it, unfortunately, because the back's a bit tired, and it's
really
a very heavy instrument.
Yeah.
So the jazz bass has become the instrument of choice.
I noticed you've
nowadays.
given Fender a plug there.
Oh, just a nice shirt.
While you're doing that, I just thought I'd quickly plug the Pub Legends Volume 2, which you can get at ProCopy, and I think you're on this album.
Could be. I haven't actually looked at it yet.
Yep. There you go. You can have a quick look at it. $20. All proceeds go to Pecco. And talking about Pecco, just because we'll get to the end before we go back, it was really nice to play with you at the Charles Hotel.
Oh,
and really nice that you could come along and join everyone, and awesome player as you are. And it was just a great family vibe, wasn't it?
That was an amazing gig. It was a fantastic gig, really. You know, as I said, it's a shame that it takes something like that to sort of, you know, motivate everybody and get it all happening. But the community that it became, you know, was spectacular.
Yeah, it's Perth, I don't know, everyone just raised their level of everything, and we all got together, and it was just sensational, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Everybody just went, you know. It was great. And it was, you know, it was very, very enjoyable musically for me. You know, the kind of material that I haven't played for, you know, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And it just, you're going, oh wow, yes. And the loudest gig I've done in probably 25 years too. And ripping, absolutely ripping.
So, okay, let's go back to where we were before. Sorry to break away there.
No, that's good.
There's a bit of a segue.
No.
So you were in Breakaway with Denis Broad, because I interviewed Denis Broad a few weeks ago, and I think we had him on last week. That got released there, but is that when you first met Denis, or?
Yes. I had been hanging out with some people who sort of knew Denis, so I'd met him casually, but I didn't really know him. And chance came up to join the band. Steve Ram, who was their bass player at the time, was leaving to do some other stuff.
Yep.
And they sort of said, well, you know, come down and have a blow. And we had a bit of a session, and they said, yeah, come on, let's do this. Yeah. So I was in the band.
Because I remember in those years, when you packed out everywhere you played, Molly Park, Cudale.
Yeah, do the gig, pack it up, no roadies. Or we had like crew, but it was everybody in. You know, we had sound guy and a lighting guy. But when it came to setting up and pulling down, it was all in. You know.
Did you tour then as well? Or?
Yes. So I did 2 tours with Breakaway, about 3, 4, 5 months each.
Yeah.
You know, so it was pretty full on.
Yeah.
You know, it was a great.
Back to Canberra.
Great time. No, never went to Canberra. Never went to Canberra, and
once you leave Canberra, that's it. Yeah.
Well, it's only family ties that have ever taken me back there.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing else there for me. It's just that kind of place.
So, could you give us a bit of an insight into how Breakaway broke away and became Brix, if you like?
Okay. Well, Breakaway was a very long time force in the music business in Perth. And had a lot of guys go through the band in different incarnations. And it was still really crackling when I joined the band, which was good for probably another couple of years.
Yeah.
And then the scene was moving away from the style of music that we were playing and the kind of presentation that we were doing. So the band sort of fell off a bit, and eventually it just sort of slipped away.
Yeah.
But Denis had a great relationship with the Mixtures, and I'd got to know the Mixtures, who were sort of hanging. They'd come to Perth
Yeah.
And unfortunately, their bass player, Chris Spooner, had died in a fishing accident.
Yes.
So they were sort of sitting here going, well, what happens next? And somebody had the great idea that sort of the nucleus of Breakaway could join with the nucleus of Mixtures and become Brix.
Yeah. So with Pecco, obviously,
Pecco was playing with the Mixtures at the time, yes.
Peter Williams
and Brenton Fosdike and Rob Scott was playing keyboards,
Oh, Rob from Cosmic.
Yes, Rob went on to do big business at Cosmic and now he works at Victory Life Church. He's director of music and
Margaret Court's
right,
church. Yeah, that's right. Is it pastor there?
He is a pastor, but he does a lot of other things as well.
Fantastic. So that was like end of 80s, was it? Or
no, that was just very early 80s.
Sorry,
end
early
of
80s,
the 70s and
70s.
into the 80s, just into the 80s, yes.
Yeah. And so what happened? That obviously broke up.
Yeah, it just sort of slipped away a bit, and then the Brix thing came along and we sort of rehearsed pretty hard, and when it hit the pubs, it came out really strong. It just did very well. It was a good band. It was a very strong band, a huge harmony band, and all the players were good.
You're always the harmony?
Not always. John Pecco has a pretty high voice himself, so we sort of split the difference.
He's going to love this interview.
Well,
4 mentions already.
He didn't only have a high voice, but it just so happened that, so we did, turn and turn about with the high harmonies. And the band was sort of well sold. Joe Cosey was managing us. Joe Cosey was the keyboard player in Breakaway.
Obviously,
And Joe was managing us, so he did some pretty nifty publicity stunts and programs to get the band well known. I remember we went into the Herdsman on a Sunday, and the Sunday session at Herdy's was always a great session. But we went in and they said, well, we're going to put a cover charge on. And everybody went,
oh, no,
you can't do it. And nobody will ever pay to get into a pub on Sunday. So we said, well, okay, we'll do it anyway. So we went in, and the first Sunday, there was like this queue that went out into the street and right around the hotel to get in. And the next Sunday, there it was again, and it was just packed. It just took off. It was great. And I can remember that first day, Joe, Tickalock up here, and we're playing the first set, and this girl gets up and starts dancing. And she's dancing and having a great time, and suddenly the shirt comes off, right? And she's dancing around topless on the dance floor for about 5 minutes, and then disappears, grabs the shirt, and disappears. And of course, everybody in the pub is talking about this thing, and somebody that Joe has paid. She's a dancer. Joe said, "Here's $50. Get out there, drop the top, dance around for a while." And of course,
everyone started talking about it.
Yes, exactly. It became, if the band wasn't enough and the gig wasn't enough, there was this added little thing that people were starting to talk about.
So after that, what did you do musically in the 80s?
By the time Brix had sort of folded up, the whole business had changed. There were a lot of pubs that were closing, big pubs, a lot of the rooms that were just disappearing, and there just wasn't that much work for bands, especially not big bands that wanted to work big. And a lot of guys just became solo, duo. At first it was just like acoustic guitar, electric guitar, maybe bass guitar or something like that. And gradually, shortly after that, there was the appearance of the drum machine, the programmable drum machine, and the sequencer followed after that, which meant that instead of sounding just like 2 guys or 3 guys playing guitars, you could get something sort of vaguely resembling a band sound, which made it a lot more danceable for people. And it's just that sort of whole thing. Perth people just grabbed that, and it meant that there was music in pubs, but there was also music in taverns, the smaller rooms like that. And that was what Perth was looking for.
So was that before Down Under?
Yes.
Or before you got into Down Under? Yes. So you had a duo called Beat Crazy, I think, didn't you?
Oh, Beat Crazy was just very crazy. I was working solo, and the guy Barry O'Callaghan was managing me, and a number of other performers. And he said, "Paul, I think I've got a partner to get you into a duo." And I go, "Oh, yeah, okay." He said, and took me to see this act, and it was like this lady and a guy, and there were dancers
Okay.
They're really good dancers, but they're doing this strange sort of art dance thing. And I'm going, Baz, what's this got to do with me? And he said, it's all right, we'll talk. So we sat down and had a chat with this lady, and she said, yeah, I want to sing. I've had enough of this dancing. I want to go back to singing. And of course, it was Annalise Morrow. Now, Annalise was the bass player and the singer in the Numbers. Like, she was the first Australian woman bass player, and she was a very solid bass player and a great rock singer, first real rock chick, you know, in this country, and a great band.
So who played bass in that?
In that, she played bass.
Oh, okay.
She was playing bass and singing, and her brother Christian was playing guitar.
Wow.
And she'd sort of, you know, the band had sort of petered out, and she was doing other things, and she said, I want to sing. So we decided to do this duo. And it was great, because I said she's a fantastic singer, and there's a picture that's probably going to appear at some point during this interview of the two of us. And
it might appear now.
It could be. When we did our very first gig, Paz had booked us this sort of trial gig, and it was out at Southern River Tavern, so not your most salubrious neighbourhood. And we're setting up the gear, and sort of Annalise is over there, and guy comes up to the stage, and he's walking towards Annalise, and I'm going, oh, you know, I'll just, you know, have to keep an eye on her, because, you know, this guy's got the dirty jeans and the dirty T-shirt on there. And he walks up to her, and I sort of sidled up a little bit closer, and I heard him say to her, looked at her, and he said, did you used to be a man? And I've gone, oh, what's going to happen here? And I'm just sort of walking over to try and defuse the situation. And Annie's looked right into his eyes, and she said, can I say that F word?
Yeah, help yourself.
She looked right into his eyes, and she said, fuck off. And he went, oh, okay. And he did. And I went, oh, geez, this band's going to be fun. And it was.
And a hell bass player as well. So
yeah. I mean, she was just singing in she wasn't playing bass, it was just guitar and tracks, you know. But yeah, we had a great time. Yeah. Had a wonderful time.
So that went for years, and then you got back with Joe and
yeah, well, there were various sort of solo and duo and trio gigs. We had an act called Lock, Stock and Barrel.
Yeah, I remember that.
Jeff Brownrigg and Brenton Fosdike. This is you know, one of the first times I worked with Brenton, and that sort of went for a while, different things. And I wound up working with Morris Swithenbank, a very fine guitar player, English guy. Morris, as I said, got the same sense of humour as I had, and a very fine line in playing guitar with his teeth.
Are you still in touch with Morris?
Yes,
yes, cool.
Yes. Yeah. So we did that for a while, and then after a while, it was, you know, the call of the band was there again, and Brenton sort of had fallen in, I think it was through Brian Davidson, through with the DeMasi brothers, Alf and Joe DeMasi, and they decided to put something together. And initially they were working with Eddie Parisi, who wound up in Baby Animals. But Eddie sort of wasn't happy, and so he left, and they rang me up and said, come on, let's do this. And we had a girl singer called Angie Giles, fantastic front person and great singer, Angie.
I think I was hearing a song out the back before, the song that we're going to put on. Or
that's a different.
Oh, that wasn't Down Under?
There were two Down Under bands.
Yeah.
This was the first one.
Okay.
This was as Mark was saying. This one was originally called Dog City.
Oh, right.
But through Davo and Jimmy Lee, thank you, Jimmy. We got gigs up in Singapore. Now, Singapore, of course, is the Lion City. And Jimmy was afraid that if we went up there calling ourselves Dog City, they would think that we were taking the piss out of them. So he said, we've got to call it something else. So Down Under became the name of the band. You know? And I mean, that was a head turner in itself. Where Jimmy had come down from Singapore, and there was, you know, nobody really knew all the circumstances about it. But we got up there, and Singapore was in its very authoritarian phase at the time. You got into customs from the airport, and every customs officer had a soldier with a machine gun standing next to him, you know, all the way across. And you had to have short hair. You couldn't get in if you had long hair. They would throw you out. So we're walking up with our bits and pieces, and this guy comes out towards us, and we're going, oh.
You would have had long hair then, wouldn't you?
I'm fairly sure. We had to get a cut.
Okay.
You know, there was no choice. So this guy walks out, and he comes up and he says, Mr. Lee, nice to see you again, shaking his hand. And we go, oh, okay, and takes us straight through customs. Who is this guy we're working for? You know, he's an amazing person, Jimmy.
Did he ever get angry at you, Jimmy?
Not that I can remember.
Okay. Must have just been us.
Well, it could be. No, we always had a pretty. Actually, there was one time, and it was a different band, but Jimmy did speak a few words, and he was probably right to do so too. Actually, at the time, it was more our fault than anything else.
So, what would your favourite band you've seen in Perth live, a live band be?
Oh dear. That's just that's
hard question.
That's an impossible question. Yeah. I couldn't say.
Would you like to phone a friend? Or?
No, I'll take a stab at it if you don't mind. One of my favourites is a band that hardly anybody ever talks about. I know, when Brix came back from Melbourne, again the scene had somewhat changed, and it was becoming this this post-punk pop scene. There were a lot of bands like Perfect Strangers, but there was a band called The Rave.
Yeah.
Right now, John Evans.
Greg McKay.
Was Greg
McKay.
I was trying to think who was in it. I don't know. I remember Hank Langdon was the guitarist.
I think Mick O'Brien might have even been in that band.
Could have been.
Yeah.
But they were very good, and they were playing this material that you would never heard. You didn't hear it on the radio, but it was just really great rocking pop music.
Yeah.
And they were excellent. They just knocked me right out.
Big lead singer.
John, yeah.
Did he ever get angry at you?
No.
He did at me too.
Oh,
it must
really?
have been me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I'm a pretty conciliatory sort of guy,
I don't think I was.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, I was a bass player in those days, so,
No, The Rave.
Probably a guitar player, I think.
That's great, yeah. They were a great band. And so what was the first album you bought?
First album I bought, first actual music album I bought was with the Beatles.
Okay.
The first album.
It's amazing. Just about everyone we have on the show, Beatles, which is obvious.
Well, that was
we all did, yeah.
Particularly in Canberra, radio was very, very vanilla. Commercial radio, very ice cream radio. It's just, but the Beatles was about as serious as they ever got.
Yeah.
So you didn't really even hear the Stones.
Yeah.
You had to sort of look further afield to find anything that wasn't that kind of. Beatles were relatively sedate compared to the Stones. Great, fantastic, but not the same. So we even used to have to go and you'd sit out at night and listen to the radio, because if you had a good radio set, you could get Melbourne radio, you could get 3UZ.
You could get some other stuff.
And 3UZ, Stan Rofe.
Yeah.
Wilson Pickett, Arthur Connolly, Otis Redding, Aretha Franklin. Suddenly you could hear this stuff that Canberra just didn't know about, because
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it was fantastic again.
So most musicians have to supplement their income with other jobs. What other jobs have you done in your life, Paul?
Oh, gee. Well, as I said, when I left school and when I first came here, I was in the public service. I was working in the immigration department. And I left the immigration department at the end of '74, and that's the last job that I've had outside of music.
Okay. Wow. Lucky for you.
Well, yeah.
Very much.
Since mid-90s, I've been teaching music in one form or another.
Yeah.
So that was sort of, my day job as well as playing.
Because could you tell us about the ICPA and what that is and what it means and what you did there?
Okay, well, ACPA was the Aboriginal Centre for Performing Arts.
Yeah.
Now, there's a guy called Michael Leslie. Now, Michael was a visionary. He's an Aboriginal guy, obviously, an amazing dancer who was dancing in America, from Australia, went to America at the top level, had, unfortunately, some back trouble that took the edge off his career. So he came back to Australia and thought, what am I going to do to get this happening? So he set up ACPA. He got sponsorship deals from a number of companies and went around Australia, auditioned students and handpicked a really great first intake of students, brought them to Perth, organised a house for them to live in, and got these premises, which was the old Rechabites Hall in William Street, which is now a very flash place, but in those days was a truly classic kind of ruin, it was falling to pieces. And what came out of that place was extraordinary, because Michael put his whole spirit into it. he brought a great crew of teachers into it, and I managed to sneak in on the back of it. And as I said, he handpicked great students, and he just built something that was a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
Like from those first 3 years, the most obvious cases, we had Jada Milroy, who's now, she's a wonderful writer, right? She's a wonderful writer. We had Stephen Oliver, who's the backbone of the black comedy series on ABC.
Wow.
And again, an amazing writer, Stephen, he's just such a wonderful man. And Ursula Jovich, who's, apart from Deborah Mailman, she's probably the finest Indigenous actor in Australia,
yes.
and just she's up there with anybody you care to compare to. And she's also a brilliant singer and a very good songwriter. So that was just like the first intake, and it worked for a few years, and then there was politics and government and all the rest. And Michael wound up saying, as he so often said, he had no patience with bureaucracy, and basically said,
see you later.
And took the whole thing to Queensland, where the government was a lot more helpful.
Is that still going?
It's still going, yes, still going. It's a big deal in Queensland. It's a great institution.
Anything like that should be a big deal, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, he had everything there. He had the structure, he had the staff, he had the whole framework, but unfortunately we lost it.
Yeah.
But
so that led you on to WAAPA, I think?
Yes, I did the Aboriginal Music Theatre course at WAAPA for a year. Yes, and again, interesting experience. My first brush with the outcomes-based education system that we are running nowadays in all kinds of areas. I suppose I shouldn't really say too much, even though I'm now not involved in it anymore. Thank you.
You can say anything you want.
Oh, okay. Well, they were setting this up during our first year, and the whole idea is that you have statements of what students have to learn, and you have plans of how they have to learn it and how you plan to assess it and all that kind of stuff. So we were among the first to be writing out these statements and these plans, and essentially what they said to us was, use this jargon, right? We have to sell this, so we want you to make it sound as intense and as
so they could get more funding
as possible.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And it didn't matter, initially at least, that it had no substantial content. It just had to sound as though it did. And unfortunately, for me, that is how it's continued. It's just it's a triumph of the system over the actual content of the educational system.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get funding.
It's difficult.
It's very difficult. I mean, we're cooking a pizza soon. That takes 10 minutes because we can't afford to eat anything else. So.
Well, there you go. Blame the government.
So, Abmusic?
Oh, Abmusic, again, another great story. Set up by Mary G, essentially. It was the main force who started up. It's been going for a bit over 30 years now. It was relatively low profile outside the Indigenous communities. But having started with a wrecked old building and a shipping container for running classes in, there's now a very fine premises with all kinds of great equipment.
So you were there in the beginning, really?
Oh, no. I was only there for about 12 years. It was close to 20 years before I went there.
Wow.
But
what a great thing it is.
It is. It's a fantastic institution. As I said, it's got good recording studios, rehearsal rooms, great classrooms. Got all the facilities that any school could really want.
Yeah.
It's a great thing for Indigenous students. And the staff, great staff.
Yeah. My producer is saying, sign the guitar, sign the guitar, sign the guitar. So,
okay.
So we have a guitar here that someone is going to win, and there's lots of names. Everyone who's been on the show has signed it. And I think that we were going to give it to someone after the 25th episode. I don't know whether you want white on the back or you want a black on the front.
Is it white? That'll do me.
But I believe we're going to auction it on telethon.
Oh, excellent!
I think Jamie McCanty might be able to help us with that, and because he'll be doing the telethon hours, late night hours as he does. and no one better to do it than Jamie.
Absolutely.
I'm sure he will get top dollar for this guitar.
He's a very persuasive man.
I hope you're watching, Jamie, because you need to persuade everyone to dig deep and donate, because there are some unbelievable names on here. You played with lots of these guys on
the
here.
Whole business
Ewing,
on there. Yes.
Whittle, all sorts.
Yep.
Dennis Broad.
Steve Gard.
Yeah.
I don't think there's many there that I've missed.
Steve Gard did the first episode, actually.
Yes, the wonderful Steph Tornatora. I love Steph. She's a very lovely person to work with. Yep.
Okay, so let's move sideways a bit. What your favourite TV show growing up?
Bit odd, because we didn't really have TV in Canberra when I was sort of little and growing up. You know, I remember odd things like Hogan's Heroes.
Yep.
That was probably a bit of a standout, but it wasn't a big thing. You know, and when it did come in, we didn't actually have a TV. Mum and Dad would rent one for a while, and then we sort of get fed up with it, and they'd send it back, and then a few months later they'd rent it again. But it was never a big part of life. TV. So it never had a huge impact in those young days at all. We listened to more music than we did watch television.
Who were you listening to in your car on your way here?
I don't really know. I usually have Triple J on.
Yep.
If it's pop music, if it's rock music, if it's hip hop, sometimes it tends to lose me a bit. But overall, but I find that some of the bands, they're not as distinctive. Perhaps you hear great music and great players, but the overall thing strikes me sometimes that it's not as distinctive as I'd like it to be. It's not as individual.
What is your favourite type of music, Paul? If you got one, or just I mean, ultimately, I'm a blues and R&B kind of guy. That's what's here. Soul music, R&B meaning Gilbert and Clinton and Grace and Hugh, not what we call R&B today, which is it's good soul music, but to me it's not R&B because that's what it was. Yeah. And that's me from whether it's, as I said, B.B. King or Gilbert and Clinton or any of those guys. That's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, I love jazz. I spent a lot of time learning and playing jazz over the years, and that's been a passion. And I still listen to it, whether it's actually, this takes us back to Forbes Cameron in Canberra. Forbes' big passion was Duke Ellington, which he indoctrinated us into. Thank you very much. And that led to Charles Mingus, who remains an idol. The concert album up there, amazing music.
You've also got the Jeffrey Hunt Brotherhood, which you brought in.
Jerry Hunt Brotherhood. Another one of those things like the kind of fusion of country music, rock and roll, psychedelia, and free jazz. And you can't sort of say, oh, well, I think I think I know what it's going to sound like. You haven't got a chance, But it's amazing music. And the guy who wrote these wonderful lyrics on these songs, his name was Lane Tietkin, and he's virtually never been heard of again. But he wrote this whole album full of really amazing lyrics that they fitted this extraordinary music around.
Wow!
And they made one album, the whole group. They've all gone on to do other things. Yeah. But that's it. And as you were saying earlier on this evening, Brenton Fosdike, when he came in,
he brought
this in. John Lemin, who you're talking to later, John's got this, and I picked this up when I was in Canberra. There was a guitar player whose name was David Kane. David played with Company Kane, Little Gulliver, a lot of the big acts of the late 60s in the eastern states. But he lived in Canberra, and I used to go around and sit with David and listen to music, another Forbes Cameron thing. And one day he said, "This is it, mate. This is it." And he sat down with it, and we just sort of went, amazing. Truly amazing.
So if you were stuck on a deserted island, or you knew you were going to be, what album would you take with you, Paul? Which is the album that because you only have time to listen to that. There's nothing else to do. There's no women. There's nothing. It's just deserted.
Oh my, I mean, it could be Mingus. It could be The Great Concert. It could be Black Saint and the Sinner Lady. It could be Miles Davis.
You can only have one.
It could be Yes. It could be, Yeah, it's,
Can't choose one?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I wish I could, but yeah, no, there's just too much. It's just too many things, you know. I couldn't nail it.
I noticed you brought a beautiful guitar in, a telly, with you tonight. Have you got a shot of that, Mr. Strachan? I mean, Strawn.
Strawny.
Yeah. Strawny.
Sorry.
Strawny.
No
He's
relation.
from Australia.
No relation, I trust. Yeah. Yes. This back in the 80s. We're back in the 80s again.
Yeah.
I was involved in a business writing jingles.
Yeah.
Right. It was called Jingle Concepts,
Yep.
and we did some serious work at the time.
So David Andrews had...
David was the business side of the thing,
yeah.
and I did the creative work. And we were sitting there thinking, and he said, you know, I think we need a real guitar, a real good guitar for the studio. So we set off down to Fremantle and saw Scott Wise, who I knew already.
Yeah.
And Scott, you know, legendary guitar maker. He's not that well known as a maker of electric guitars, but he made this for me. And again, you know, we're talking about 35 years later. It's still, if somebody says, come out and play guitar, that's the one that comes out.
So what types of woods did Scott throw together?
This is New Zealand Kauri pine.
Yeah.
The back of the neck you can see is red tingle, which he got from some old growth timber that came out of the Bustleton jetty.
Wow.
So, you know, totally seasoned and beautiful. And that neck doesn't move.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, once every 5 years you just nick it, tickle, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
And from being from that long ago, it has an ebony fretboard, which you can't have anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, and he just got it right. You know, he would call me down there and say, "Do you like this neck or this one?" Oh, no, this is the one. You know, this is the one. And as I said, from that day on, this is my number one guitar. This is
fantastic. Thanks for bringing it in. Scott, he's Margaret River now.
Scott lives in Margaret River. Yeah, he's become a superstar in the world of making acoustic guitars, and particularly of ukuleles.
One of the most popular instruments on the planet now, ukulele.
The unlikeliest star thing of all time, the ukulele. Who would ever have guessed?
Tiny Tim had it going on many years ago. Everyone's just catching up.
We did a thing with Tiny Tim in Canberra. He was in town promoting a concert, and basically what we had to do was sit on this truck and drive around and play acoustic guitars while he sang Tiptoe Through the Tulips and waved at people.
Yes.
And his thing at the time was, you know, he was this clean person. He used to take 3 baths a day and all that kind of stuff.
He stunk.
He stunk to high heaven.
I tell you, he came to gobbles.
You knew. There you go. See, I'm not lying.
No.
He knows.
No, we all were like, whoa, because he turned up with this musical director and no one knew what we were playing. What are we playing? It was like, we're going on in 5 minutes and everyone's panicking. What are we playing? So we jumped on stage, the musical director's going, just relax. And then he goes, right, just C. We're just going to play in C. So we go dum 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 dum. Then he goes, speed it up, dum 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 dum. We just went on for 25 minutes. This thing.
Yeah.
And he was at the front smelling, going, oh.
Yeah. Miss Vicky must have been completely blocked in her sinuses the whole time they were together, I swear.
I think everyone was out the back in the band room. So, what does a future hold for you, Paul?
Well, we're looking to do some travelling, as well we still can.
Yep.
We've got a trip planned to south of France next year, and Vietnam, Cambodia separately. And we try and sort of spend as much time in Bali as we can, because we found a nice place over there.
Beautiful. Yeah.
We like it, but of course, there's always playing. I'm still playing all the time.
You haven't retired, have you?
I've retired from teaching.
Yep.
But not from playing. I'm still playing. I play with a band called the Zodiacs. Alan McCowett, who you know.
Fantastic guitar player.
Yes.
You guys do the Osborne
Park Bowling Club.
Yeah. Friday nights.
Yes.
See it on Facebook.
Yeah. Alan runs 3 different bands, so it sort of revolves.
Do you want to give that a plug?
Osborne Park Bowling Club. Every Friday night, Zodiacs, Chubby and the Checkers, Rosie and the Checkmates. It's always something good.
Alan's a good old Whyalla boy.
Exactly. I have been connecting the dots here and saying, well, Alan's from Whyalla, I didn't know you were from Whyalla.
Yeah, Jamie Page.
I knew Steve Gard was from
Steve
Whyalla, and I found out that Jane Page was also from Whyalla.
Yeah.
I mean, are you you're sort of the same sort of age as Jamie?
I'm asking the questions tonight, Paul.
Sorry, okay. I'm just because I know Jamie has long said, that he used to come and see Breakaway when we used to play in Whyalla. We used to work there a lot in South Australia. We'd be in Adelaide for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and we'd come down and work Whyalla the early weeks, and then sometimes we'd stay there for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Jamie and I have known each other, so long time. And Rob Watson, Tony Woodward,
right.
and there's heaps of them.
Amazing for such a small town. And it's not exactly
the greatest place in the world.
Well, it's not exactly a cultural wildlife there.
No, that's right. That's right.
But all these guitar players are turning up.
So my producer's saying,
"Is he?
So
okay.
Do you collect anything, Paul?"
Snakeskin shoes.
What?
No, I have about 4 or 5 pairs of snakeskin shoes and boots. Just one of those things.
So you obviously get them made somewhere?
In Bali.
In Bali, yeah.
Yeah. They're farmed snakes, and not wild killed.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a lot cheaper to get them made there than it is here.
Absolutely.
So I can afford it. Otherwise,
my wife just came back with a snakeskin jacket, leather jacket thing. So same thing. I think it was a special shop that you get them from. So.
Yeah. Well, there's dozens of places. Yeah.
So, do you collect anything, Paul?
Anything else?
Yeah.
Apart from the shoes? No, not really. Not really. I think for a guitarist, bass player, I have remarkably few guitars. Just a few that I like and a couple of basses. Yeah. Not many. I have, since I've been working with Indigenous people, I started collecting Australian pottery from the 50s and the 60s. A lot of it, like the souvenir ware, had pictures of either Aboriginal people or Aboriginal art. Some of it was wonderful, and some of it was so bad as to be really, seriously insulting. And the breadth of it sort of fascinated me as I started looking at this. So I have amassed a fair-sized collection of that, just out of interest.
So apart from the snakeskin shoes, there's all of that. If I ask the question again, is there something else that you collect?
No, not really.
No. Okay. Bit more serious. What would you put on your gravestone?
Oh, I'm glad you asked me that. I would like to have what Spike Milligan has on his. Right, Spike Milligan's gravestone. His is actually in Irish, but I'd have it in English, and it says, "See, I told you I was there."
No one believes him.
And that's it. That'll be it for sure.
Okay, one last question, Paul.
Okay.
Something we don't know about you, or nobody knows about you. Something you can tell us. It doesn't have to be a skeleton in the closet or anything. Just, is there something we don't know that you don't really talk about, or?
Oh, well, something that not a lot of people know is that my family actually came from Africa.
Okay.
My mother's parents came from Africa. They went to England. And then my mother and father came out to Australia, migrated to Australia in 1951. But that's sort of one of my little hidden closet things that maybe one day, they came from Nigeria. I think they are Yoruba people, and it would, part of me says it would be nice to sort of just go back and have a look, maybe meet some of the family if that was at all possible. I mean, we don't know, we only know Mum's mother is about all we know of the family, really. It's just this birth certificate and a marriage certificate, and that's it. That's the only connection that's there. But yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that with us. It's really cool. So we're going to have a clip, or we're going to have some photos of, is it Down Under? Or
this is the second Down Under band.
Yep.
This was John Meyer, Brenton Fosdike, Andrew Gus Warburton, and myself.
What names?
And well, it was a great. It was probably the thing in my career of which I'm most proud was what we did in that band. It really, really, just delighted me to go on stage every night
Yeah.
and play in that band. It was so good and so enjoyable.
So there's a song that you wrote?
No,
Or-
this is a John Meyer song.
Okay, yeah.
I had a couple of originals in the band, but John's were by far the best, I think. Brenton's had some good songs in
Yeah.
there too. Brenton had some really strong ones. But it was John's that really sort of, just knocked me out.
Yeah.
This is one of my favourite John Meyer songs
Yeah.
in the clip. And it's
Cool.
like, John plays a blistering solo. Brenton's just, he sings great. And Gus is just
Yeah.
on top of it, and it's actually even got a bass solo in it.
Yeah, fantastic.
Which is not the reason I love it, but I love it anyway.
Well, viewers, look forward to looking at some of these pics and listening to the audio. Paul, thank you so much for coming in.
It's my
It's
pleasure,
really
mate.
nice to talk to you and to hear your stories and your journey through your life, and I appreciate everything you've done for all of the kids and everyone in the music industry. So
That's great. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
I can only say, overall, it has been a pleasure. It
Yeah.
has been a great life.
thank you very much. Good on you.
Loved it.
Thank you. We'll see you later. Good night.